Good afternoon and welcome to Ohio Stadium. My name is Tom Orr. I'm joined by Tony Gerdeman from BuckeyeScoop.com. Tony, it is a little warm, but otherwise it is a gorgeous, gorgeous day for football in Ohio Stadium. The Buckeyes welcoming Tulsa at 3:30 p.m. We got a ton to get through today, but I mean, first of all, it's a little warm, but man, the weather today is just about perfect.
Is this what they call a Chamber of Commerce day?
I think Chamber of Commerce days are more in the mid-70s, but this is still not too bad.
Well, for the people who enjoy sun and blue skies and football, yeah, this is nice. There's a bunch of tailgaters out there. People seeking shade where they can find it, including us a little bit. So yeah, it's warm right now. It's going to get a little cooler later on, but it's just a beautiful day for football, for basketball, for cricket, for whatever. And
since the first question everyone has is about the rain, no rain in the forecast. Since the second question everyone always has is about the winds, the flags at the top of the stadium are kind of blowing very gently towards the west, but the flags on the top of the goalposts are just kind of like hanging there. So looks like no rain, no substantial wind to impact anything during the game today. One thing that will impact things during the game today, Ohio State has been missing one of their big players on the defensive line. Zach Harrison listed as not available for this game today. This is obviously the defense is a question for Ohio State. That's sort of the issue that Ohio State has to sort of figure out this week. How big is the loss of Zach Harrison?
Well, I think it's big in that it thins out the defensive end group, which has already been pretty thinned out by losing Tyler Friday, Jack Sawyer not really being ready enough to where Larry Johnson feels comfortable putting him in there. So it's big in that it moves everybody up. So I am interested to see Jack Sawyer getting more play. Obviously, JT Tuimolo getting more play. Does Darian Henry Young, do they need to go even deeper this week to replace some of those snaps? Zach Harrison has played a ton of snaps, so I don't expect one person to replace him. They're going to need everybody.
Yeah, and my guess would be, as far as starters there, probably Tyreek Smith on one end, Javonte Jean-Baptiste on the other would be my best guess on starters there. But I mean, as you say, they always play rotation. So now what's the second pair out there? JT Tuimolo and Jack Sawyer?
Would you be shocked if JT Tuimolo started? I wouldn't.
No, I honestly wouldn't. And 3 weeks ago I would have been. Now, not at all. He very clearly is, in their minds, ahead of Jack Sawyer, which is not at all what I expected coming into the season. But he's played significantly more snaps. He's played more meaningful snaps. And at this point, if he started opposite Tyreek Smith, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, and not that they replaced 2 with 2, but if you start out with Tyreek Smith and JT Tuimolo, and then you want to bring in Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Jack Sawyer, I don't know how often the two freshmen are going to be together, so they may try to keep them away from each other.
Yeah,
and just keep the veteran presence out there. At least, never two freshmen at the same time until the game is no longer in doubt.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, I don't want to say dire straits, but they've got to do what they've got to do. And if somebody has to come out, somebody has to go in.
Right. And you wonder about Philip Montgomery and his coaching staff for Tulsa. If you see two true freshmen out there at the same time, is that when you're throwing a whole bunch of screens, or you're trying to suck them upfield and open up some running lanes to your quarterback, or whatever it is? This is now that the news is out, and Ohio State releases that 3 hours before kickoff. So now that the news is out, if Tulsa's aware of that, maybe that tweaks a little bit some of the things they're thinking about doing during the game. One other interesting piece of news in that availability report: linebacker Trevion Mitchell listed as a game time decision. That's another spot where Ohio State is not totally settled yet. That would be, and he's another guy who he's probably had more snaps than it. I mean, there have been a million linebackers playing. I think Trevion Mitchell's right at the top of the list of who's played the most snaps.
Yeah, he's tied for the team lead in tackles, averaging 10.5 tackles a game. We were talking, I'm not sure if you are at the table yet, wondering who is Trevion Mitchell's backup, because we haven't seen much. They play so many, and there's just the two inside guys. So I'm wondering, if he can't go, do you start Cody Simon and Tommy Eichenberg both? Is this where Kayvon Pope, we've seen him as more of a third down passing linebacker? Is this a full-time Do they play more on rundowns? Is it Dallas Gant has been the catch-all guy? You need a Sam, he's a Sam. You need a Mike, you need a Mike. And we know the Mike and the Will, as we always talk about, they like that to be interchangeable. So Dallas Gant should be able to move to the Will as well. So I don't know what they're going to do. They have plenty of options, or what they would have to do. There's a bunch of options, but losing your leading tackler at linebacker when you have linebacker issues, not exactly great for the week you're trying to get back on track as a defense.
Yeah, and they haven't lost him yet, just to be clear. He's a game-time decision. Last week, Josh Proctor was a game-time decision and played. Plenty of times, guys are listed as game-time decisions, and then they walk down the tunnel and they're not in pads before the game, and it's like, it is not game time, and the decision has already been made. So, in the defensive backfield, Josh Proctor, who I just mentioned, out. We knew that. Season-ending injury last week against Oregon. That's a position where, like we talked about the linebackers, who's going to be in those linebacker spots. That free safety spot, there's Ryan Day rattled off 4 names of people who might be there this week. I am real intrigued what they do, because Bryson Shaw graded out a champion week 1 against Minnesota, did not have a great week against Oregon last week. You wonder if they view him as a potential long-term replacement, or is he a placeholder until they figure out what they want to do there?
That's the $1 million question. And then I guess the $2 million question is, do they have anybody better? And that's really what's going to dictate how much anybody plays. And they have talked about Ryan Watts, Court Williams, Marcus Hooker is still there. And then you mentioned Bryson Shaw. I don't know how much all 4 of those guys are going to play, because I don't think they want to put Ryan Watts out there just yet while the game is in doubt. Court Williams has had some experience there in practice. He has still yet to play, I believe, as a Buckeye. I don't know if he got some minutes, some snaps last week on special teams or anything like that, but he's at least familiar with the safety position. And just the way people talk about him, I almost feel like if he gets out there, he'll do well. But it's also hard to expect that in your first real outing when there's a bunch of pressure on you and the coaches are looking for somebody to step up and take that position.
Yeah, and obviously they like him a lot. They've been talking him up since he got here. Missed last year with a knee injury, but he's just been someone you constantly hear good news about, good reports about, but he's not yet playing. So obviously there's something holding back, whether it's physical or just not quite ready for the demands of the position. Someone else who's not on the injury report today, but he hasn't been on the injury report the last 2 weeks either, and he hasn't played. Sevyn Banks. The corner spots, I think we came into the year thinking the corner spots were going to be maybe the biggest question on this defense. They've maybe been the biggest pleasant surprise on this defense, and you still haven't seen Sevyn Banks. Cam Brown and Denzel Burke have both been, I think you came into the year expecting Sevyn Banks is the guy who, he's going to be the number 1 corner, and then they'll figure out who's number 2 behind him. And then the 2 guys who were like, well, maybe these will be the guys who are number 2 behind him, have both been outstanding this year, and we still haven't seen Sevyn Banks. I mean, how big would it be to get him back on the field and have him healthy?
Well, if he's ready, if he's playing at the level that they want him to, that would be huge, and it would give them another guy to turn to, which is why they can afford to move Ryan Watts to safety if they want to. And even adding Legend Cavazos, continuing his play. As you're talking about Cam Brown, I'm thinking he was really good last week, just like Bryson Shaw graded out a champion in week 1 and then was not great. We don't know how consistent Cam Brown is going to be yet. Last week was a great start. I think he had 3 pass breakups in that game. So he's been pretty busy defending the RPO and the slants really, really well. A huge, pleasant surprise, but was also seen limping during the game. So he's not on the report at all. Everything's, no reason to think that he won't be playing here. I'm not saying that. It's just he was playing last week and still limping. Is he 95%? Is he 100% now? Whatever percentage he was playing well, and I expect that to continue. But until it does, it's still a little bit of a question mark because it's so early.
Other names on the availability report this week that maybe we didn't necessarily know for 100% they would be on there. Running back Marcus Crowley, who left on the cart last week with some kind of injury on his face. offensive lineman Harry Miller, which we had sort of anticipated would be out, but will be another Luke Whippler day at center, and defensive lineman Noah Potter also out today. No huge surprises there, no massive impacts, I don't think. The Zach Harrison one and Taraja Mitchell, to me, are the two most important, the most significant on that list today. We've done a bunch on the defense. I'm gonna let you just pick one storyline on offense. What is the thing you were most interested to see today on offense? And then I'm going to give the mic to producer Kevin, and we can start going through some listener questions.
I just want to see how the offensive line handles the Tulsa defense and the blitzing, the 3-3-5, that sort of thing. They're going to come from a bunch of different angles. As we talked about in one of our previous shows, Tulsa has had 9 tackles for loss in each game this season. That's a lot. And if they're that disruptive, that's not going to be great for an Ohio State offense, and is still looking to establish the run. Has not been great at it yet. And so how aggressive, how much are they just wanting to show that they can run the ball?
And the offensive line, too. The offensive line last week had some issues against Oregon. Got pushed around in a way that I don't think we necessarily expected. There were some schematic pieces of that as well. I talked to Ross Fulton about that on one of the Morning Scoop episodes this week. If you want to go back and check that out, that is well worth your time. Ross does a fantastic job analyzing that type of stuff for us. But, I am very interested to see. You're right. They are going to come out and try and establish the run. We did our pregame bold prediction show, and I said Ohio State has 220 rushing yards, 220 passing yards. They had double that on the passing last week, and we're like half of that on the rushing. That was not something that sat real well with Ryan Day, so I know he's going to want to come back, show that they can run the ball, show they can push. An American Athletic Conference team this is a good team, this is a decent team, this is not a team that should be able to physically compete with Ohio State. Ohio State should be pushing them off the ball, be able to run the ball, be able to do whatever they want on offense today. It'll be telling if that isn't the case.
Tulsa does have like a 358-pound nose tackle, though. But Kevin, what's the first question?
The first question is, a lot of people are asking about Harry Miller. What's going on there? I mean, obviously, we reported that we saw him at practice, but I think people are looking for a little bit more clarity on the Harry Miller situation.
Ryan Day's not talking. It was good to see him coming off the field at practice. So, at least at this point, he's physically there. So I'd still give him another week or two, and we'll see more and continue to see who comes off the field at practice and who is dressed, who isn't. But I don't know how much longer that's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, what you're looking for at this point is progress, and that felt like progress this week when you see him coming off the field. And that's, we don't get to watch practice, but when we're in there on Wednesdays to start interviews, you see the guys coming off the field. And you can see last week we saw Josh Proctor was dressed in pads, but he had a yellow no contact jersey on, so you figure, okay, he's not there yet. He's probably going to be a game time decision. Harry Miller came off the field this week, was, it was significant progress. Obviously not 100% ready to come back, but it seems like he's progressing in the right direction, which is about all you can ask.
DK is asking, do you think with the heat that we might see a little bit more substitution pattern out of that?
That's interesting because it is warm. There may be some cramping, but as Ryan Day says, they start hydrating 48 hours out. So they've been drinking their Gatorades and eating their Pedialyte Pops and drinking a bunch of water. But yeah, it wouldn't be a bad idea. All of the criticisms of the substitutions and things like that, yeah, I would expect that to continue. I mean, this is now a good reason to do it. And just giving guys some breaks, some hydration breaks, getting them out there so they stay fresh and nothing obviously bad happens.
Right, and they have the depth to do it, which is good. And this is the kind of game where you would sort of expect, between the depth that Ohio State has and Tulsa doesn't have, and the heat, you would expect this to be a game where kind of Ohio State can kind of lean on Tulsa a little bit in the first half. And even if it's not working in the first half, some of those runs that may not break in the first half might break in the second half, as your 358-pound nose tackles, for example, don't handle the heat very well. I am nowhere near 358 pounds, and I can tell you I don't always handle the heat very well. So, yeah, it is going to be. I would expect to see a bunch of guys today, but maybe the pattern's a little different. Maybe it's not just kind of a constant changeover. Maybe it's more, okay, midway through the second quarter, you're swapping in some fresh bodies rather than just every drive you're seeing a new linebacker pairing.
Yeah, Nick asks, do you think we could see Jerron Cage or Antoine Jackson playing today?
Well, and Jerron Cage is no longer on the list, and Antoine Jackson is not on the list, so I would expect both to play. They do need to see Jerron Cage out there. He was playing well at the end of last season. I think we talked a lot about Haskell Garrett and Teron Vincent playing together side by side. I don't know if it's gone as well as they had hoped with one of those guys, both of those guys, one of them playing nose. So I would expect Jerron Cage to get more involved there, assuming he can, and he's not on the availability list, so it sounds like he's healthy. So maybe more Jerron Cage, more Antoine Jackson, more Ty Hamilton continue. Like, he's still mixing in, and this is one of those games where maybe, we talked about the rotation. This would be a good time to get those nose tackles in there and get them some experience, and just, it's time for Jerron Cage to bulk up the interior of the defensive line.
Yeah, and the Teron Vincent, Haskell Garrett guys playing together, that before the season was this really intriguing idea, and it was like, well, I mean, we'll see how they hold up against the run, and they have not always held up well against the run. And those are, this is an important point. Those are distinct positions. Like nose tackle and three tackle are distinct positions with distinct responsibilities in this defense. That is not just take one step to the right and do the same exact thing. There are significant different responsibilities. There's different roles. There's kind of different skills needed for those positions in some ways. And, I'm not willing to just declare the Haskell Garrett nose tackle thing a failed experiment yet, but it's not a successful experiment yet either. So if you have Jerron Cage back, if you have Antoine Jackson full go, we saw Antoine Jackson last week, obviously. So, if you have those two guys, and you can have Haskell Garrett and Teron Vincent at the three tech, that maybe makes you better in two different spots, which would be a big deal for Ohio State. And again, you're getting to the point where you need the depth on the team, especially on that interior defensive line. That would be a big thing to have Jerron Cage being play 15, 20 good snaps today.
And we also saw Tyleik Williams get in there as well.
We have a couple of comments that are very similar, so I'll read them together. RK saying, will the coaching staff quit managing egos and just play the best 11? And then you have John Alexander saying, play the best 11 players on defense, good or bad, you learn from your mistakes.
That's the goal. They always say that's the goal. You wonder if they're still sort of figuring out who that best 11 is, because I think they came out of fall camp thinking they knew who the best 11 were, and then it hasn't always translated onto the field, or situations have exposed why that wasn't necessarily the case in all the cases. Ryan Day has made a point of talking about shrinking down those rotations, which is basically another way of saying play your best 11 and stop. The old Tony Alford was asked a couple of years ago during the Mike Weber, J.K. Dobbins year in 2018, how do you keep both of those guys happy? And he was like, what? That's their job to keep me happy. Like, he doesn't. It's not the coach's job to keep the players happy. It's the player's job to play well enough that they're keeping the coaches happy and earning that playing time. I think you're going to continue to see that be how this plays out more and more with this defense.
I also don't know whose egos they're protecting, because I don't know who they're playing in front of people who should be playing instead. So I don't think they're protecting anybody's egos, because I don't know that there are any egos on defense right now.
DK wants to know if Tom is going to trip the drum major again, and somebody else said that they were going to turn off the TV if the drum major fell, because it would be a bad omen.
That was a bad sign when that happened right out of the gate. Tom, what do you have to say for yourself?
If you look, I have posted on the YouTube channel, the BuckeyeScoop YouTube channel. If you look at Ohio State Marching Band Ramp Entrance 2021, you can see I have a very clear alibi. I'm shooting up the tunnel, and then I went to the right of the right side of the flagpole as you're looking up the ramp. The drum major ran on the left side of the flagpole. Innocent. Really innocent.
You could have been using a tripod, or used your tripod to trip him.
On the advice of counsel, no, okay, yeah. No, what was funny was I was closer to him than probably all but 3 people in the stadium when that happened, and I had no idea, because I was on the south side of the flagpole with a big flagpole behind me and a cheering crowd, and there was not like an audible like, whoa, in the stands. It was just I had no idea, and then you mentioned to me after the game, and it was like, what are you talking about?
I'm tired of your lies.
Yeah, Urban Meyer is going to do a full investigation of this and have a very angry press conference about it. If he knows who got JT's knee or the drum major, you're in trouble.
I think I saw a picture of the drum major falling down on Urban Meyer's coffee table this week. It was somewhere in the middle.
Let me find the next one. Jimmy wants to know who gets more carries today, Mayan Williams or Trevion Henderson?
I am going to say Mayan Williams, but also I don't know that it's going to be by a lot. You know, it's similar to maybe last week where it's a 15 for one guy, 12 for another guy, something like that. I also think they're going to get Master Teague back involved. So, 15, 12, 7, something like that.
I think you're going to have 3 guys with between 10 and 15 carries because they are absolutely going to get Master Teague involved this week. He got 0 carries last week. I don't know that he played a snap on offense last week. We just talked about them not necessarily needing to manage egos, but you also want to keep guys. You know, Master Teague has been a fantastic teammate. Master Teague has been nothing but gracious about all of this. You would think that they're going to want to keep him in the rotation, especially with that Marcus Crowley not being healthy today. You've really got 3 running backs. The 4th running back would be Evan Pryor, who we haven't seen on the field yet, who they like a lot, but he's not probably quite ready yet. So, yeah, I would expect to see a heavy dose of Master Teague in the second half. Honestly, it wouldn't completely shock me if Master Teague led the team in carries today, like you have Mayan Williams with 12, 15 carries in the first half or, first 3 quarters. Trevion Henderson about that number, and then just, 10, 15, 18 carries for Master Teague in the fourth quarter.
I also wouldn't be surprised to see Master Teague break one. If this is an aggressive defense, that if they blitz and there's nobody, and that blitz gets picked up and there's nobody behind them, I can see Master Teague going the distance, at least once today, just because he goes forward as much as he can, and that's the best way to try and get that, beat that blitz. He's not dancing in the backfield, so he's just getting to the line and going.
Yeah, and Master Teague is one of, if not the fastest guy on the team. I know no one thinks that, but it's true. He has incredible straight line speed. So, if you saw that in 2019 in the second half of a bunch of those games where he would have a hole, hit a crease, and just go. And once he's going, you can't catch him. But I don't know if you can hear, but the Ohio State marching band just marched through the stadium, and we are getting drum cadence with a ton of echo, and it is, I'm sure, fantastic.
I've been given a 2-minute warning by the Redcoats because they're going to be opening the gates here shortly. So let's wrap it up on one more. Dale wants to know, and I know you kind of talked about it earlier, but with Zach Harrison out, who do you see filling in that spot?
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if JT Tuimolo gets the start. The more logical, the easier expectation would be Tyreek Smith and Javonte Jean-Baptiste. But you're going to see a bunch of JT Tuimolo out. You're going to see more of Jack Sawyer. You may see some of Darian Henry Young. Or I wonder how much, like, just a 3-man line we would see.
Yeah, I mean, you could see. I think the answer is yes. You're going to see all of those people. To start the game. Probably Tyreek Smith and Javonte Jean-Baptiste would be my best guess, but over the course of the game, especially with the way Larry Johnson rotates at defensive ends, it's gonna be all of them filling in. It's just more snaps for everyone because Zach Harrison was eating up a lot of those snaps through the first couple games. So there, as producer Kevin just told you, I can see the gates swinging open behind us. So they're about to let the masses in here. So we're going to wrap it up. And thank you guys all for joining us. Thank you for your wonderful questions and your being a part of the show with us. We do appreciate that. We will be back after the show. We'll have our live stream of the Ryan Day postgame press conference, player interviews, all that kind of stuff. All at youtube.com/BuckeyeScoop. And then Tony and I will do the postgame instant reaction episode of Buckeye Weekly after that. We'll have our thoughts on the game. We didn't even get to talk about the defensive coordinator and how the plays are going to call. I mean, we've talked about, if you want to hear about that, listen to the Saturday Morning Scoop or any of about 4 Buckeye Weekly podcasts this week. So we talked about that a bunch this week. But do check those out. And then join us after the game. One way to make sure you know when we are going live on YouTube is to subscribe to our channel. Hit that bell, or hit the bell, which will subscribe you to our channel. What then will happen is you'll get notified every time we go live, every time we post a new video. We've We've had a bunch of cool content already from today, and we'll have more coming up later in the day. So thank you guys all for joining us, and we will talk to you after the game.